when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place. When we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place. When we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place. When we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place. We are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place.
Welcome to the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. We are a spiritually alive, radically inclusive, and justice-centered community. We are so glad you are here. If you're a visitor, I hope that you'll say hello in the chat and let us know you're here. You're also invited to email welcome@muuf.org so we can answer any questions that you might have about our worship or faith formation for children, youth, and adults, or social justice programs, or community building and caring connections. Welcome to all on this first Sunday in July, July 4th, Independence Day, a time of celebration, a time to reflect on the past, and a time to recommit to the work of advancing the health of our democracy. Let me briefly remind you of our summer Sunday schedule. We premiere our services twice on Sundays at 9 a.m. on our Facebook page and at 11 a.m. on our YouTube channel. Remember, if you miss it on Sunday morning, you can watch it later that day or throughout the week. We also gather on Sundays for community time between the two services on Zoom at 10 a.m. The link can be found at muuf.org/virtual. In addition, members and friends frequently bring their lunch over to the fellowship on 21 Normandy Heights Road at 12:30 p.m. on Sundays for an informal in-person gathering. You can eat with others, enjoy the beauty of our grounds, walk the labyrinth, and children might enjoy the new slide that was added last month, or climbing the boulder nearby. Our offering today will be split 50-50 between our fellowship and the Interfaith Food Pantry, which gave out 1,400,000 meals last year to Morris County residents. Thank you for your generosity. It will make a difference. We are delighted to host a guest minister today. Welcome to my friend and colleague, the Reverend Nathan Ryan, the senior minister of the Unitarian Church in Baton Rouge. Reverend Ryan is a lifelong Unitarian Universalist with a deep commitment to the hard and joyful work of building the beloved community. I'm so glad we get to spend time with him today. Let us open our worship by lighting a chalice. If you have a chalice or a candle at home, I hope you'll join me and you use all around our country in sharing in the flame of our faith. We kindle the light of our liberating faith. We celebrate the warmth and wisdom of community. We covenant to rise to our better selves as often as possible. We connect with this precious day in which we are called to life, to love, and to liberation.
Hi, my name is Nathan Ryan. I'm the senior minister at the Unitarian Church in Baton Rouge. I'm so glad to be doing this pulpit exchange with you this week. What you're going to hear is an intentional 4th of July service, and it's an extension of something we're doing here in Baton Rouge. So there's a minister, the Reverend Sunshine Wolfe, who released about a 10-minute webinar on trauma and reopening during the pandemic. We broke his talk into 5 parts. You're going to hear one of the 5 parts today. Today we're calling it the Let's Not Talk About It section. Essentially, Sunshine says that one of the ways we respond to trauma is by not wanting to talk about it, wanting to move on, to not admit that it's a reality. And I see that all the time with other traumas here in this state. Did you know that Louisiana is the most traumatized state in the country? This is according to a sociology professor that used to be a member of the church. She studied trauma, and she said there's more disasters in Louisiana than anywhere else. And so I have seen among my people this tendency to not want to talk about the last hurricane, or the high prevalence of industry-induced cancer, or racism, or poverty, or misogyny, or regression. And isn't this true about America, too? Especially on this, the first of our 2 Independence Days? A surgery is relatively fast, but the recovery takes months, and it's marked by periods of rapid recovery and then stagnation. Reopening doesn't just happen. Recovery doesn't just happen. We are slowly getting closer, day by day, fit by fit, to this new world, a day when we will no longer live in fear. We are not there yet, not even close. But we will get there, looking backwards all the way. And isn't the work of a religious institution to get us there?
So it's not going to be instantly over. And we already know this is going to be a slow process as folks are getting vaccinated. And even after everyone's been vaccinated, for some of our folks, it still won't be safe for them to come out because of how immune compromised or other things they're dealing with. It probably won't matter how many people are vaccinated. They still may not be able to leave their homes. And so we're dealing with people in a lot of stages of engagement and where they can be in their world. Folks will start to feel tired, more depressed, more exhausted. And I want to say, when I say folks, I mean you. Not just the people you serve, but you, the leaders. Your ministers, your religious educators, your board presidents, your RE teachers, your everybody who's doing any kind of leadership in your church are going through these things too. And so you want to do the things that help care for people. Allow them to enter slowly and to resist that urgency that may come as a result of wanting to get back to things as normal. It's really common for folks after a traumatic experience to not want to talk about it anymore. Even a slight mention of COVID might get some folks a little reactive. And that's where ritual helps you, those kinds of things.
Jubawat Sambero noted that for years she had wondered about the language used by her parents and grandparents when it came to talking about time. She reported that in her native Kalenjin, people say the past that lies before me and the future that lies behind me. They point ahead when they talk about the past. They point back when they refer to the future. I always thought there was something wrong with the language because once I started in school and studied in English, I learned that the future lies before us and the past is behind us. She then stood up to explain her new insight. This morning I understand that what we know, what we have seen, is in the past, so it lies before us. What we cannot see, what we cannot know, is the future. Then she began to walk backward. So the past we see before us, but we walk backward into the future. Maybe my grandparents' way of saying it is more accurate. Herein lies the paradox. The journey of life moves forward towards physical death, which is a future event. Yet, when people die, they join the ancestors in the past. As such, the journey is toward a past that lies before us. The past and future are not seen as dualistic polar opposites. They are connected.
Someone put a button in my church mailbox recently with a quote from Alice Walker that says, "Resistance is the secret of joy." When I read that, I immediately thought, yes. And then a few seconds later, I was like, wait, no, I don't think I believe that. What I believe is closer to the reverse, that joy is the secret of resistance, because we need joy in order to keep going. And this is readily apparent in what I experience as a common difference between events planned by individuals or organizations for marginalized communities and those planned by people or groups with dominant identities. Those led by marginalized communities are much more likely to incorporate joy and art and dance. Is there anger and outrage? Yes, of course. But there's more than just that. At events led by those with dominant identities, it's much more likely that there will be only anger and outrage. At best, maybe a song or two. What I think it highlights is that when you don't have the privilege of taking a break from injustice, you don't take a break from joy either. Instead, joy becomes all the more important. Liberation is more of a marathon than a sprint. Outrage without joy threatens to leave us all breathless, far short of the finish line.
Some days worry, some days glad, some days more than make you mad. Some days more than than shine. When you see what's coming on down the line. Some days you say, oh, not me, never. Some days you say, bless God forever. Some days you say, curse God and die. And the day comes when you wrestle with that lie. Some days tussle and some days groan, and some days don't even leave a bone. Some days you hassle all alone. I don't know, sister, what I'm saying, nor do no man if he don't be praying. I know that love is the only answer, and the tightrope lover the only dancer. When the lover come off the rope today, the net which holds him is how we pray, and not to gods unknown, but to each other. The falling mortal is our brother. Some days leave, some days grieve, some days you almost don't believe. Some days believe you, some days don't. Some days believe you, and you won't. Some days worry, some days mad, some days more than make you glad. Some days more than shine. Witnesses coming on down the line. Witnesses coming on down the line.
Every day I check the websites. I used to look at the case numbers, but now I'm always looking at vaccination rates. I watched Louisiana shoot up at the beginning of the vaccine release. And then slowly, I've watched my state slide back down to where I'm used to us always being, at the back. And I get angry, which is really just a cover for worried, but anger feels more salient right now. And I get angry at my people, the people where I'm from, that they will not do the thing they know will keep them and me and my family safe. There is a choice right in front of us to admit that how we are living is sick, and that there is a free, very safe, relatively painless, short-term treatment for a long-term solution that is the end of this trauma and this violence and this suffering. And I see my people choosing to avoid it. But the thing that is the most remarkable about families right after a death or a tragedy is that, in my experience, rarely do they leave behind all of the dysfunction. Instead, they seem to always act exactly how they've always acted, just more. The amplification because of tragedy. And the anger that I'm experiencing is not that Louisianans are acting differently than I expect. It's because we are acting exactly how I've always known us to act. I'm probably talking about white southeastern Louisianians, because those are my cultures I come from. It might come from other parts of the state and other cultures within my region, but they're not mine, and so I can't say. And I feel trapped by this. First of all, because I'm actually trapped by the lack of consideration for our own health. We are stuck in this pandemic until people can get the vaccine. People will get the vaccine. And also, because I can't safely share this frustration with my fellow Unitarian Universalists. You see, for far too long, I've seen our faith exchange universal salvation for individual absolution. Let me explain. In 2016, we saw a massive flood in Baton Rouge and all over the state. 40% of the state flooded. Actually, tomorrow marks the 5-year anniversary of Baton Rouge's Hell Summer, a summer that still leaves the Sterling family without justice, that still leaves the city traumatized by its violent police response to protests. A police force so afraid after 5 officers were shot and 3 killed that it left barricades around its building for more than a year. And thousands who flooded, now they have second mortgages on their homes. No way for financial stability. No promise of relief coming, and ready for more re-traumatizations by other storms, floods, hurricanes. But that's a sermon for a different day. I bring all of this up to say that when right during the flood, I put out a plea on Facebook for people to simply see us. It was a post, by the way, that I made that of my, however long social media has been around. My entire social media career got the most engagement, or I guess closest to being viral. And amidst all of the wonderful responses, all I asked was for people to just see us, see what we're going through. And I got wonderful responses, messages of support, more than $75,000 from Unitarian Universalists from all over the country, intended for Unitarian Universalists that flooded. And that money has still been helping. It helped 15 who flooded this past month here in this church. But there was a decidedly more potent response. I cannot tell you the number of responses I got. There were some variation on the theme of, well, that's what you get for living in a red state. Or those of us liberals or Democrats or blues or whatever are sick of bailing out you red people. And if the 2016 flood didn't happen, those comments are almost entirely portable, all on their own, as responses to Hurricanes Laura, Rita, Katrina, Gustav. Name any election of any governor or representative or senator from this state could have seen the exact same responses. Ignoring the simplicity of the fact that Louisiana's political and partisan systems are more set up to justify and maintain a long history of systemic abuse to all people, but especially the descendants of the kidnapped and the stolen lands, by those enslavers and corporate and polluting executive elites. And ignoring the simplicity of lumping all of the vastly complicated country into 2 very different and contrived colors, this propensity to find ways to blame others for their own suffering points to a major theological failing of our collective faith. Ever since our Unitarian ancestors came out of Calvinistic puritanical culture, it's a complicated history that involves congregational polity and a slowly evolving theology, but once again, sermon for another day. We've always struggled with this idea that there are the elect and there are the rest. And I know that Unitarianism exists in large part as a rebellion from the idea of predestinationism in Calvinism. This idea that from the very before you were born, God had already pre-selected who was going to heaven, who would be tortured forever in hell. But it still keeps showing up for us. Specifically, I see our people over and over opting for individual absolution. Behaviors that save the individual, that absolve us individually of the sins of our systemic oppression, over universal salvation, the very universalistic idea that none are saved until all are saved. Look no further than the idea that we describe our sanctuaries as safe places, a place for like-minded people where we can be around, we can be safe from all those out in the larger world, as if somehow our friends and family and neighbors are not safe for us. Once again, I'm probably talking to white people here. It may translate to other races and cultures, but that's for you to discern. I saw this tendency flare up after Donald Trump was elected in 2016. I heard Unitarian Universalists tell me they would never visit my state because of how it voted, or telling me that we deserved the hurricanes because of how many people were red down here. I see it in our desire to distance ourselves from anyone who does not say the right words or act the right way. And I see it happening over and over with this pandemic. I cannot tell you the number of times I've heard about how many people deserve to die because they are too stupid or too ignorant or too hateful or whatever to wear masks or get the shots. Rarely do I hear these insults as attempts for individuals to absolve themselves of the sins and deaths of the system. A member where I serve said that you should not look at individual behaviors, look at policies. What in our institutions have made it so, for example, that some people have access to affordable housing, wealth accumulation, and avoiding the incarceration industry? Or what in our institutions have made it so that some people wear masks and get vaccinated and some people don't? Masks didn't magically become polarized and partisan. There was a decision by political leaders and pundits to make masks partisan. That was intentional, and it is killing people. And it is also very true that the rollout of the vaccine prioritized dense city centers. The rollout happened in mass vaccination sites that benefited those who could see others getting it, those who lived in density, over individual doctors' offices and pharmacies, which would have had more of an impact in a state like Louisiana, where a lot of its population is spread so far out that very few have access to hospitals or urban centers. I'm not saying that it was bad policy, but it was still a choice, one that prioritized other parts of the country over here. Something that has happened so often throughout this country's history that white people, and probably black people as well, but I'm not one, so I can't say. But down here, we have learned that we are not a priority, and to be skeptical of intervention. What I'm trying to say is that for 400 years, there's a 400-year history of policy and treatment of people in Louisiana, and especially black people in Louisiana, that have led to this state being more sick and more impoverished and more exhausted of the strings that come from outside help. Go ask anyone who had to listen to the relitigation of Hurricane Katrina for years as people came in to help. Which is to say that while I hear a lot of criticism with the goal of individual absolution for many UUs, I hear very little talk about how to save all of us, especially down here. How to save every person, regardless of how emotionally able they are to take in this vaccine. And if we are ever going to get where we need to be as Unitarian Universalism, if we are going to get to where we need to be as the Unitarian Universalism that this hurting world desperately needs, we have to start prioritizing universal salvation over individual absolution. I really wanted to preach the final part of this sermon from the sanctuary. One of the things I learned is it's so echoey in there, it makes the videos like inaudible. So I'm up in the sound booth. You can see all our wires here for the final part of the service. The circle window, largest circle window clear circle window in the state of Louisiana. We built it for the poet Edwin Markham. He's a Unitarian. They drew a circle, shut me out, a heretic, a rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle and took them in. The God that I know, and I know that term doesn't work for everyone. So what I mean is that interconnected love for us all, the abiding mystery that we are bound together in, the fact that we are pulled to be a religious community even when everything says we shouldn't be. And by that I mean, when the pandemic means the only way you can get church is by watching these services online, you can't be in the building. I mean, it's just everything that's kept us apart, and yet we're still together. The God that I know is the one that when people can see the truth, when the world is as it actually is revealed to them, that is when God does the work. In other words, seeing it is the work of the church. Uncovering your light is the work of this church. And seeing that we are all interconnected and that life itself is a gift, that is the work of this church. I never learned about the 1918 pandemic. They never taught it to me in school. They never mentioned it. I heard about it for the first time last year. Many people have called it the forgotten pandemic. Some people have said that the end of World War I and the Roaring '20s are why people forgot, but I think it was more intentional. I think they were all connected, probably. Right after the floods of '16, people wanted to stop talking about it. Right after Katrina, I wanted to stop talking about it. I was living in Austin at the time, and I remember being surprised when I went back to visit my family in October that it was still on the front page of the paper. I know it may seem goofy in hindsight because of how big an event that was. But at the time, I was buying into the coping mechanisms of my cultures. And the city I lived in and the country I lived in had stopped talking about it. And I'm seeing that happen now. It feels like we are willing to move past this, to pretend it didn't happen, to not dwell on it, to forget that not everyone here has access to the vaccine, or that masking protects the unvaccinated. I'm talking about children and families mostly. Protects the unvaccinated more than it protects you. There is something powerful in being seen, in being noticed. Reparations, for example, is a way for the descendants of the enslaved to finally be seen. Seeing someone who is suffering from depression or acknowledging the suffering after a major death, especially if it's from suicide or addiction or one of the deaths our culture has put a layer of shame on top of, doesn't make things worse. It's actually a salve, a form of healing to say to someone, what you went through is real. You are here, and we are here for you. I believe we live this life walking backwards. We see our past in front of us. We are guessing at what our future is. When we pretend that the storms didn't happen, the sickness didn't happen, the state-sponsored violence didn't happen, the mistakes didn't happen, when we refuse to see what is right in front of us, or behind us, I suppose, we are putting on blinders. No, actually, I mean in front of us, like the past, in front of us, because we're using that. We are putting on blinders, we are narrowing our view and not letting God in to do the work. This is one of the hardest things to see, too. For a year and a half now, we have been told that an invisible thing is out there, and it could kill any one of us. And at some point, especially when I can't see it, my brain starts telling me I must have been making up the fear and the risk. The two people's fathers on my street died from it. A member of my family died from it. 3 members of this church died from it. Most of you probably know someone who died from it. The virus is real and scary, and we deserve to have it seen. When we work to save ourselves or even worse, to absolve ourselves at the expense of all else, then we are not doing our work as a religious people. Instead, we need to find a way to help all of us see how scary these past months have been. If someone copes with the crippling fear by avoiding medical care or avoiding the vaccine, or by avoiding acknowledging our history, then we have a holy obligation to stay with them while they are in the shadow where the sun refused to shine. And yes, this was intentionally preached on the 4th of July. When right now in our country there is a movement to forget about race as a construct invented by the ruling elite in our country to keep the poor poor and to further allow the cognitive dissonance to live on stolen land and to live on the stolen labor of millions of people. Seeing it does not hurt God. Although it might make us uncomfortable for a time, seeing it brings us into the world we have been promised since before we were born. Remember, diagnosis determines treatment. As we come back in, let us see it so that we can know that we are real. What we experienced was real. That we are amazing, that you are amazing, and you have been able to survive this. That is a remarkable feat. You have made it this far. I have made it this far. If we pretend that what we went through wasn't really difficult and maybe even horrendous, then we aren't allowing our light to shine. As you move forward, know that seeing this thing, seeing our past truly, is the only way we can effectively get to the future. The only way we can effectively build the world we deserve. Amen.
Shall we gather at the river where bright angel feet have trod, with its crystal tide forever flowing by the throne of God? Yes, we'll gather at the river, the beautiful river. Gather with the saints at the river that flows by the throne of God. On the margin of the river, washing up in silver spray, we will walk and worship ever all the happy golden day. Yes, we'll gather at the river, the beautiful river. Gather with the saints at the river that flows by the throne of God. Ere we reach the shining river, lay we every burden down. Grace our spirits will deliver and provide a robe and a crown. Yes, we'll gather at the river, the beautiful river. Gather with the saints at the river that flows by the throne of God. Soon we'll reach the shining river, soon our pilgrimage will cease, soon our happy hearts will quiver with the melody of peace. Yes, we'll gather at the river, the beautiful river. Gather with the saints by the throne of God.
Our closing words are by the Reverend Wayne Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place.